I will say this is probably the most attention I've ever seen given over one vote. But it's an issue that's important to all of us. It affects all of us, and it's not just one vote, because the issue is not going away. In fact, both Republican candidates for governor have indicated that they may call a special session before we would go in next year to deal with this issue. This is an important issue. It's something that has to be addressed, and it's not going away. By the way, Senator Gatti had a PowerPoint presentation and had stuff that he passed out. I didn't bring y'all any handouts, and I'm not quite as flashy. If you have any questions, stop me, raise your hand, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. If I make reference to a statistic or anything like that, and you want me to provide you documentation, let me know, ask me afterwards, interrupt me now, I'll write it down, I'll get it to you. Because I assure you I'm not making up anything, I can back up everything I'm saying. I didn't bring any of it with me. The issue is auto insurance reform. And the real question is, listen, before you can discuss whether we should fix it or whether the bill should have passed or what the bill was going to do, you have to look at where we are right now. We have the second highest auto insurance rates in the nation, but we have the least affordable insurance. And the reason I can make that distinction is that the state with the highest rates is Michigan. But their per capita income is so much higher than ours that ours is actually the least, that makes us the least affordable insurance. And there's a reason for that. One of the issues is we have less competition. We have less insurance companies writing business in Louisiana than other states do. The commercial, this bill dealt primarily with personal auto, but commercial insurance, auto insurance coverage is in crisis right now. There's only a few commercial insurers that are still writing business in Louisiana. They've left the state. I was talking to a guy whose business, he was a logger. His insurance was $16,000 per month per truck. That puts people out of business. If you look around North Louisiana alone, several fairly large trucking companies have moved out of the state because they can't afford to insure their trucks in Louisiana. Others are having their drivers drive longer routes to avoid driving through Louisiana just because of the fear of litigation here. So this is not a myth. It's not something invented by the insurance companies. It's not everybody picking on the trial lawyers. It is a very real crisis. It's a very real problem that the state of Louisiana has, and we are, frankly, last in the nation. It is essentially a hidden tax on living in Louisiana. It raises the cost of living in Louisiana. Quick personal story. My daughter graduated from Louisiana Tech a couple of years ago. Same driver, same driving record, same car, same insurance company. She moved from Ruston, Louisiana to Arlington, Virginia. $288 a month in Louisiana, $125 a month in Virginia. Same everything. Less than half. And I've heard so many stories of people in Texas and Mississippi and Arkansas and other states. The numbers, the disparity is huge. And it's very real, and it's something we have to deal with. When you say high insurance rates, our insurance costs a lot. But the insurance companies, it's not like they're laughing all the way to the bank. The average profit on insurance companies in Louisiana, 7.7%. National average is 8.4%. So they're charging us more, and they're making less money here. And there's a reason for it. We're going to get to that. Insurance rates have gone up in Louisiana 52% since 2011. As rewind 8 years. What's different now in 8 years ago? The law is essentially the same. But think about the billboards and the billboard advertising loyalty. 8 years ago, we had Morris Barker, and that was bad. And you had a lot of local lawyers who do a pretty good job. The local lawyers, really, I don't think are the problem. The problems are the Dudley DeBosiers and the Gordon McKernans. I hope they're watching, guys. You're all in trouble. That influx has come up in the last couple of years, and essentially is the explosion of everybody filing suit. No matter what number you look at, if it's injury claims per accident, if it's the size of personal injury claims, the amount paid out per claim and per accident, no matter how you look at it, Louisiana is the most expensive. And House Bill 372, frankly, was drafted to address the problem. I watched Senator Gatti's presentation, and look, I don't want to make this all about Senator Gatti, but if y'all saw his presentation, to be perfectly honest, it was about 70% completely unsupported conjecture, things that he just flat made up and said, what if? It was about 25% straight up bald-faced lies and about 5% factually accurate. What his presentation showed is he has absolutely no idea how insurance companies set rates and how rates are determined. He had this whole presentation about rate reform versus payout reform and all that. That is a complete conjecture made up by trial lawyers to try to deflect the issue and hide, frankly, what's going on. Try to ignore and cover some of the facts that we're all having to deal with. What he was advocating was premium reform. It was telling insurance companies what they could and could not use in setting their rates. Well, you're on a very dangerous, slippery slope there, because they don't. He talked a lot about credit scores, as if to say credit scores shouldn't affect your insurance rates. If it didn't affect your insurance rates, it wouldn't affect your insurance rates. Insurance companies don't go out and make things up and try to charge you higher rates. You have to be very careful when you start telling insurance companies what they can and can't charge, because everything is data driven. If they're using a factor, then there's a reason they're using that factor. Factors they use: driving record, age, claim history, area you live in, type of vehicle you drive, number of drivers in your household. Yes, credit score is a factor, and they use many others. The fact that Ryan talked about credit score a lot. He gave an example of a guy with an 800 credit score and a DWI having cheaper insurance than a guy with a 400 credit score and a perfect driving record. I've run that scenario by about a dozen insurance agents and underwriters, and they all told me that's completely not true. I suspect that's something he made up. I'd like to see where those numbers came from, because he was just trying to make a point. Fact of the matter is, those things that they use are some that they looked at it and said, if you fit into that category, whatever it is, it's more expensive to insure you. And you're talking about credit score. Yes, if you have a low credit score, it doesn't mean you're a bad driver. But if you look at it actuarially across the country, when you're comparing individuals with a lower credit score are going to be more expensive to insure. They're more likely to make claims. They're more likely to make.
Yeah, so like us, we currently have a low average credit. Have been for 4 years. We have flawless driving records. My insurance here is probably almost 3 times what it was in North Texas. And it's due to, I'm going to guess, primarily because we have a low credit score. So that's something that we need to fix it. Because I have no tickets, no wrecks, no claims, flawless.
I'm sure your credit score is part of it, because it is a factor that they look at. But your insurance would be at least twice as high as Texas generic, just because Louisiana is higher than Texas. So that's not all of the problem. It may be part of it, but what insurance companies have essentially done is looked at each of these factors and said, if you fall into this category, the risk that they're assuming by insuring you is as a high factor.
Assuming. For me, that's the problem. Because you're going to have people in the poverty level in Louisiana, which we have a lot of the worst poverty level. You'll have people in the poverty level their whole lives, but they may be good drivers. So are they going to live their whole life paying more auto insurance, higher premiums? I got a lot more questions for you, but I will get to
That's fine.
Look, we're new to these meetings here, so we're not sure how they work. We just thought it was kind of open dialogue.
Each of those factors have a legitimate, actuarially based reason that they affect your credit. I mean, your insurance rates. An example. All right. Ryan talked a little bit about a particular insurance company that lowered rates last year after session. One of the largest insurer in Louisiana, State Farm, has lowered rates 3 times in the last 12 months. A total of like 13%, maybe, I don't remember the exact percentage. They've lowered rates. Each time you lower rates, you have to file papers with the insurance commissioner showing what you're bringing in premiums, what you're paying out, and all those other factors. State Farm showed that they've lost money in Louisiana. Overall, they're losing money, but lowering rates. And it seems counterintuitive. If they could just raise rates and get more money, then they would just raise rates, right? Well, no. The reason they wanted to lower rates is because they looked across the board and said, we've lost 100,000 insurers. One of the reasons they think they're losing money is they priced themselves out of the market. They did raise their rates too high. They lost people. So now they're trying to lower it to pick the market share back up. The market will set itself. That's why insurance companies are not just going to look for some generic reason to raise rates and price themselves out of the market. Because if they do, somebody else is going to step in, take their insurance, take their business, and move in other directions. The market will set itself. They're not just out there looking for ways to raise rates and gouge the consumer. Each time they have to file what's called a rate filing, and that's going to come up later because that was actually in the bill. When they do a rate filing, they have to put all of this information out, which is what they're bringing in premiums, what they're paying out in payouts, what their loss ratios are, all of that data, so that they can look at it and see exactly where it's supposed to go. To address this issue, the task force was passed last in 2018. And Brian spent a lot of time talking about the task force, but essentially the task force was tasked to answer two questions. Why are we the highest and what can we do about it? Because we are in fact the highest. There's really it's not a debatable point. We are the highest. So the second question is, what, if anything, can we do about it? Look, Brian criticized the task force, and it may have been legitimate. He criticized, I think they said they only met 3 or 4 times, how long they met, and all that. That's fine. He spent a lot of time criticizing the methodology of the task force. I didn't hear him talk a lot about the findings of the task force, or the bill that ultimately came out of the task force. Because the fact is, the task force did its job except for one thing. They really messed up one thing. They didn't have a final meeting and endorse the bill. That's it. That's it. It's the only thing they did wrong. So Ryan made a huge deal about saying this is not a task force bill because the task force didn't endorse the bill. That's true. The task force didn't endorse the bill. All but, I think, 2 or 3 members of the task force individually endorsed the bill. And the ones that didn't endorse it were what? Trial lawyers. The trial lawyers on the task force didn't endorse the bill. Everybody else did. Representatives of business, representative of insurance companies, representative of everybody else endorsed the bill except for the trial lawyers. And again, that's not necessarily a secret. One of the trial lawyer members of the committee never came to a single meeting. The representative of the Trial Lawyers Association came to every meeting, said not a word. Didn't offer, well, that's not correct. Didn't offer any solutions, didn't offer any suggestions. All he did, every meeting was say, this won't work. This won't work, this won't work, without giving any basis of why it wouldn't work. So, essentially, the task force did what it did. One of the reasons that I'm here personally, to be honest, I'm running for re-election in Caddo. I represent 0 votes impaired. I don't have any voters in this room. I don't have any voters in the parent. I'm here for one reason. One, this issue is important to me. And there's a saying in politics and in practice of law, if you're explaining, you're losing. Well, since the vote on this bill, Senator Milkovich and Senator Gatti have been doing a lot of explaining. And I watched Gatti's presentation, and I've seen Milkovich's video, and I've been watching it, and most of what they're putting out is misinformation. It's just simply not true. One of the reasons that I started responding on y'all's Facebook page was because Gatti brought me into it. He ran a video clip which showed some clips, some quotes from me on the House floor, made it look like I said something that wasn't true. And I want to address that. I said 3 sentences in that video. Number 1, bill came out of the task force. It did. Task force met. The bill came out of the task force meetings. Number 2, the task force met. It did. The task force met. Number 3, the task force looked at the issue comprehensively, came up with 4 plans to address the issue. They did. Those are all factually correct statements. But if you go back and watch the video, it's still linked on your Facebook page. The way he edited the video makes it look like I said something that wasn't true. Go back and watch the video again and think about that. I said 3 sentences on the video. Everyone completely factually accurate. The task force did its job. It did its job except for voting on the final bill. But so what? So what? One of the other things Senator Gatti said was that Jude, the committee that killed this bill, we passed 50 bills last year. Remember that? He was talking about how many bills they did pass as opposed to the ones they killed. You know how many bills that they passed were the result of a task force? 0. None. Not being the result of a task force is not a reason to not vote for a good bill. If it's a good bill, you vote for it regardless of where it came from. If it's a bad bill, you kill it. But if it's a good bill, you vote for it, whether it came out of a task force or not. That was simply an excuse, a convenient excuse, and an explanation to say, okay, we're going to kill this bill, and we're going to call it a task farce. And we're going to say the task force didn't do its job. Task force did its job. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, except have the final meeting to endorse the bill. The bill was crafted by the task force. Everything came out of the task force, so it did what it was supposed to do.
He said he couldn't get the information.
He had everything.
He said he couldn't get it. He said it was the last minute he couldn't get it. You know what I mean? So he had to sit there and,
Like if they were on the bridge repair since February.
yeah, he said, I can't get it. They wouldn't give me the information. And so he was last minute trying to put anything together.
I don't know when he got it, but it was available before session.
In here last week.
I know, it was all available before session. I don't know when Ryan got it, but it was all available. Everything was out there, everything was public. Maybe he didn't look in the right place or ask the right people, but it was certainly available.
But he made a big deal of that, like it was something you guys or somebody was supposed to send him, and he didn't ever get it. You know what I mean?
He made a big deal out of it because he's looking for an excuse for his vote. What was probably the worst vote of his career, I think Mike said he was committing political suicide. I hope you were right, because that was it was a bad vote. The bill essentially addressed four things, and I'm only going to talk about three. But one of them was jury trial threshold. And essentially, in Louisiana, to get a jury, there has to be, the amount in controversy has to exceed $50,000. If you just look at that in a vacuum, I can see how that makes sense. Maryland is $15,000. Every other state is $5,000 or below. 36 states are at zero. Somebody asked Ryan the question, what's the average of the other states? He said that's between $10,000 and $15,000. No, it's $1,500. The average of the other states is less than $1,500. 36 are at zero. 12 are between 0 and 5. Maryland is 15 and we're at 50. We're so far an outlier that it's ridiculous. Now the issue...
How does that affect rates?
All right.
I had a low threshold. I never understood how it affected the rates.
That's a very good question, because nobody can answer that. Because you can't look at it generic. You can't say, ooh, if this trial had been tried in front of a jury, they would have awarded $20,000 and the judge gave, $35,000. You can't look at that generic.
Payouts would be higher instead of 50,000 versus 15.
You can't really look at it and say a jury would have given more or less than a judge did. So that's why when an actuary looks at it, they can't really put a dollar figure on it, because you can't.
No way to quantify it.
There really is no way to quantify it, because you can't say, one of them's a complete hypothetical. How would a judge or jury have dealt with this differently? But what you can do, look, a lot of legislation is not reinventing the wheel. You don't have to have a task force. If you look at Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, our drivers are not different from theirs. Our cars are not different from theirs. Our doctors are not different from theirs. Our roads are not really that much different from theirs. We're not more fragile than they are. But we get injured more in accidents than they do. Insurance is more expensive in the state. So one of the things we should do, look at what the other states are doing. Nobody else has a jury threshold over $15,000, ours at $50,000. Is that the silver bullet? I don't know. But it's a brick in the wall. It's something. And if everybody else is doing it better than we are, shouldn't you at least consider doing it like they do? Yeah.
What about the litigation period? So we have, like here, you have to file a lawsuit within, is it a year?
Yeah, 1 year here.
If you expand that, then wouldn't it cause less litigation? Because after so long, a person can't claim injury, because I'm sure there's a lot of people faking injuries. You can't fake an injury after such an amount of time. If you lengthen that, would it help us?
Well, you can. I mean, look, that's one. I said I was going to talk about 3 of the 4. That's one I really wasn't planning on talking about. I'll address it since you asked me.
Sure.
But that one cuts both ways. I have trial lawyers and defense lawyers who are on both sides of that issue, simply because, again, you don't really know. If you look at prescription period, usually that favors the defendant. A shorter prescription period would. All right, put it this way. When you're talking about the 1 year prescription period, you've got a lot of the lawyers necessarily like it because it gets them into the lawyer faster. and they can get them to the doctor quicker, and they can make sure they manage the litigation better. I've had lawyers say, I don't want a plaintiff hiring me 2 years after a wreck. The witnesses are all gone. They're harder to find.
That's what I'm saying. We have a shorter litigation.
We have a shorter. Yes.
Texas has a longer one, right?
Most states are a little bit longer than we are. Again, I have no idea how that would fit. Again, it's hard to quantify that because if somebody decides a year and a half after a wreck, you know, my back injury, I didn't really think I was injured, but now maybe I am, and you figure it out a year and a half after the wreck, you could bring a claim if it's 2 years. You can't bring a claim now. If you didn't already bring it, you can't. So that could actually cut both ways. And that's hard to quantify, so I didn't, yeah.
Let's circle back to the jury threshold. So how important is the actuarial report in all this? Ryan talked a ton about the task force and some about the actuarial. How important is the actuarial report when looking at legislation?
The actuarial report on this task force issue, the one by the task force, was relatively inconclusive because of what I said before. You can't quantify. There's no data.
Yeah, they had it. Well, I'm looking at it here. That at 0.5% might.
It was inconclusive.
Right, and
Like, you
then
can't say.
0.25 if you reduce it to 0.
There were other actuarial reports. In fact, Commissioner Donovan, the insurance commissioner, testified in the House committee that there were actuarial reports that the insurance department had that had, and I don't remember the numbers. In fact, I can send you a video link because I have a link of my exchange with him. But he says, I think it was 5% for direct action and maybe 5% for collateral source, and they had no idea about jury trial because there's just no data. But again, that's why I say you go back to, if everybody else is doing it different than we are, and everybody else is getting a better result than we are, shouldn't we at least try to do it like they're doing, whether the actuary report says it'll work or not? I mean, and essentially that was where we were coming from on that. But let's try something. Right now we're last. We're last. We're paying the most. What we're doing right now isn't working. So let's try something different. And look, as far as the juries go, I have a trial in a week and a half in DeSoto Parish. We're going to try it to a jury, and it's going to take about 4 days. If we were to try it to a judge, it would take about 5 hours. There's a very big difference in trying a case to a judge and trying a case to a jury. If you have a rear-end accident in Texas where there's no property damage and the person only goes to a chiropractor, you can't really find a lawyer to file that claim because it's small potatoes. Now, you don't need a lawyer. You can settle it with the insurance company, but you can't really get a lawyer to file a claim because the fact of the matter is it's the time and effort that goes into presenting the case is cost prohibitive to the lawyer. And it's not that juries are too expensive. It's that bench trials are too easy. When you can try a case like the one that I have next week to a judge in 5 hours, it's too easy. So what essentially happens is when you have these $15,000 and $25,000 policies, there's no damage to the car, the person goes to a chiropractor, they say they hurt after the wreck, it's write the check. The insurance company just writes the check. There's no point in fighting it. If it's a rear-end accident and they say they're hurt, just write the check. And look, insurance companies lose more than $15,000 and $25,000 settlements than $1 million judgments. It's the little claims that are blowing the lid off of it. It's the little claims that the billboard lawyers are taking advantage of. The legitimate lawyers, Richard does it, he's a legitimate lawyer. He doesn't do the billboard. He represents people and he actually does a good job. He takes real cases of real people with real injuries and tries cases and does a good job. And we have a lot of local lawyers that do that. But that's not the problem. The problems are the billboard guys who sweep in and get to the $15,000 and the $25,000, and that's what's breaking the insurance industry. And there is a way to fix that because it's not a problem in other states. So we can look at what the other states do.
So tort reform is in.
To some extent, it would have to be. At least it's a very good question. If other states are doing it and getting a better result, shouldn't we at least try?
Well, I agree. I'm for it. You know,
the other one,
it was over a year ago, but somebody, T-boned her, knocked her car around, knocked into somebody else, and she just got this letter from one of the billboard guys this week that she's being sued. You know, didn't control her object. You know what I mean? totaled it, but he didn't, she couldn't control it, even though she's the one that did.
Again, we lead the nation in claims per accident, lawsuits per accident, payout per accident, no matter how you slice or dice it. And it's simply because it is simply too easy to prove the case. And juries and judges have a lot to do with that. It's not that judges are more liberal or judges are going to give more money than juries. It's ease and access, and it's just simply too easy. The other one is collateral source. And this was a little hard to explain, but I'll do it with an example. Let's say you have a person's injured in a wreck, they have $100,000 of medical bills. Every penny of those bills gets paid. Blue Cross covers it completely. They're out of pocket nothing. Blue Cross pays $40,000. The other $60,000 is contractual write-offs. Now you see those on your bill when you get the EOB. There's $60,000 write-offs, and nobody paid the $60,000. Blue Cross paid the $40,000. All the bills got paid. You know how big a check the insurance company has to write? The whole $100,000, and it goes to the plaintiff. The whole $100,000. The plaintiff paid nothing. Nothing. Blue Cross paid $60,000, paid $40,000. The other $60,000 was just written off. But the plaintiff and his lawyer get to keep the whole $100,000. That could potentially be the single biggest factor in excessive payouts in Louisiana, because medical treatment is so expensive. And if someone doesn't have health insurance, the doctor can just pick a number and say, real quick, I had a kid get ready for mediation. I had a letter from a doctor saying that the surgery was going to be $75,000. That's it, just $75,000. No, just a letter said $75,000. The day before the mediation, I get a letter from the plaintiff's lawyer with the doctor now says that surgery is going to cost $125,000. The only thing that changed, he found out my policy was bigger than he thought it was. So now all of a sudden the surgery went from $75,000 to $125,000. Doctors can just make up a number, and the insurance company has to pay it. And that's the collateral source portion of the bill was designed to rein that in and let the jury or the judge hear the evidence of insurance and hear the evidence of how much was paid, how much was written off, whether any of it actually came out of their pocket or not. Because it is a complete windfall. It is a complete windfall. That $100,000 was never paid. The $60,000 especially just written off. But yet the plaintiff gets to put it in his pocket. And yeah.
So one thing I actually might have a little bit of an issue with it, but like insurance subrogation. So I remember in Baton Rouge, there's a couple firms, State Farm hires them, somebody has full coverage insurance, they get hit, the insurance company writes a check to their person, and they hire out this firm that will essentially act as a plaintiff for State Farm because they're segregated to the claim. So I mean, does that kind of contribute to some of this issue as well? Because I'm pretty sure Louisiana might want to be one of the few states that allows insurance companies to segregate claims and sue other drivers.
I don't practice in any other state, so I don't know what they do as far as allowing subrogation. I know Louisiana does. I mean, one of the problems we have is so many of our drivers are uninsured. And you need UM coverage, you need uninsured motorist coverage, because there's a good chance the person that ran the red light hit you might not be insured. So if you don't have UM, you're not covered. So what they do is fix your car and they go after and sue the guy who a lot of times didn't have insurance.
I just said, I wrote to my friend who's in the insurance business, and I asked him, why is our car insurance highest in the nation? Simple answer, please. He just texted me back. He said, New Orleans liability of poor drivers and freedom of lawyers to sue without constraint. Only state in the union line.
I agree. That's in a nutshell, that's essentially the problem. And that dovetails perfectly in the next point I was going to bring up, the direct action statute. 2 states in the nation, Louisiana and Wisconsin, allow an injured person to sue the insurance company directly. 48 states, you sue the driver that hit you. You don't sue his insurance company. I personally don't think this is that big a deal as far as the way judgments go and whether it's rendering a different verdict. But the insurance companies do. And that's really what's important, because competition lowers rates. If you have a gas station, one gas station on a corner or one gas station in a town, it can charge more for the gas. But if you have 3 in the same intersection, they're going to have to lower their cost of their gas because of competition. I mean, competition lowers rates. If we have more insurance companies writing business in Louisiana, the rates are going to come down just simply because of competition. Nationwide insurance company. It's either the largest or second largest insurer in the nation. You know, Nationwide is on your side, Peyton Manning. None of y'all are insured by Nationwide, not your cars, because they don't write business in Louisiana. They don't write in 3 states, Alaska, Hawaii, and Louisiana. I have no idea why they don't write in Alaska, Hawaii. but they don't write in Louisiana. I know why they don't write in Louisiana, because I've met with the head of Nationwide about 7 years ago. And with Jim Donald, the insurance commissioner, we were trying to tell them our litigation environment is not as bad as you think it might be. Maybe you could come write business in Louisiana. He said, 2 reasons we're not coming. $50,000 jury trials, direct action statute. Getting those off the books will write business in Louisiana. They're scared of the direct action statute. They absolutely hate it. I really don't think it makes that big a difference. But if it will get more competition and will open the books and let more companies write business in Louisiana, why not do it? Why not? I really don't think it will hurt. I've had one case in 25 years where I think it was an issue. I was representing a Virginia insurance company whose insured was here working in the oil field in Hatter. The accident report was written in such a way that said it was not his fault. It was the plaintiff's fault. But he lived in Virginia and he had gone home. So they sued him here. To this day, I don't think he ever knows he got sued. They never served him. I was never able to find him. Because I couldn't find him, I couldn't present a defense. Well, the other guy says, no, the accident report's wrong. It wasn't my fault, it was his fault. I couldn't find my guy. So I couldn't defend the case. I really don't think he ever knows he got sued. And we wrote a $50,000 check on a case that probably was not his fault. But we couldn't prove it. They sued the insurance company directly. They couldn't find him. They didn't sue him. One case in 26 years of doing this that I think direct action played a role. I really don't think it's that big a deal. It's certainly not taking rights away from anybody. But if it will open the floodgates and insurers will come to Louisiana, I see absolutely no reason to not try it. It's another one that you can't really actuarially look at it and say, okay, judgments will be less if the direct action statute is repealed. You can't really look at it and quantify it. But it's the overall context of the whole litigation environment. It's one issue in one area where we are such an outlier. Again, only jury trial threshold over 15,000. One of only 2 states that allow the insurance company to be named as a defendant. We're an outlier. Why not do it like everybody else? And at least see. Competition does lower rates, and the real question, because that's what House Bill 372 was trying to do, was put Louisiana on a footing with most of the rest of the states, and just see what will happen. We think rates will come down generic. We think they will, just based on it works in all the other states. Why wouldn't it work here? But the House Bill 372 attempted to put us in line. Again, it's hard to quantify. Which brings us to the final piece of the bill, was the one that I think there's been the most misinformation. Gatti stood up here last week and said this was an insurance company profit bill. Insurance companies were going to raise their rates and lower their payouts, or leave the rates the same and lower their payouts, and they're going to laugh all the way to the bank. He kept calling it an insurance company profit bill. The only way you could come to that conclusion is either you don't understand the English language or you didn't read the bill. That's it. It's the only thing I've come up with. Because the last paragraph of the bill specifically said that insurance companies will, I think it's 18 months after the bill goes into effect, but every year they will file rate review with the insurance commissioner, and they'll submit premium collections, they'll submit loss payouts, they'll submit loss ratios, all of their data, and if their loss ratios are down, their rates shall go down. The bill said shall, not may, not got to, if you want to quote Barbara Norton, but it said shall go down. It said shall. And so
So that's a guarantee.
it said shall. It said if the loss ratios go down, the rates shall go down. And he stood here and said, if this bill had a guarantee in it, it would have passed. I call hogwash on that too. They were just looking for an excuse and a reason to kill the bill.
But Jim Donlin and Talbot, they all said the bill did not have a guarantee. See, this is where it gets hard for just regular people out here to follow politics. Is all the fault.
Glad you brought that up. Jim Donlin testified very clearly, if the bill passed, rates will go down. Ryan Gatti and Milkovich both said, they quoted Kirk Talbot, the author of the bill, as they said even the author said the bill would not lower rates. That is absolutely not true. He never said the bill would not lower rates. He said there's no guarantee in the bill. But if you look at it across the board generically, it will almost definitely lower rates. But one thing it won't do is allow insurance companies to make a profit. Because if their profit goes from that 7.7, it goes up, they shall lower rates. But one of the ways you know that was just a convenient excuse and something for them to grab a hold of as an excuse to cast the vote was a bill that I introduced in 2014. It was almost identical to this bill. Jury threshold, direct action. I had a seatbelt provision in it, which this bill didn't have. A little bit different, but I had a 5% guaranteed rate reduction in my bill. What happened to my bill? Killed by trial lawyers. Last year, there was a collateral source bill introduced by Major Tebow, a Democrat. I introduced a collateral source bill in 2015, both killed by trial lawyers. There was a seatbelt bill introduced by Senator Hewitt last year. I had a seatbelt bill in 2016, killed by trial lawyers. These are not new issues. I had a direct action bill in 2013, I think, killed by trial lawyers. Each one of these has been tried. These are not new issues. These have been debated for years. Every single time, they come up with some reason to kill the bill.
And when you say killed by trial lawyers, can you enlighten me a little bit more?
Yeah, define the trial.
Yeah, can you enlighten me?
Lawyers who represent injured people against insurance companies. And it's not trial lawyers, not a lawyer who goes to trial. It's a generic, we used to call them ambulance chasers. They didn't like the name, they trial lawyers now. But essentially that's what we're talking about. And if you want to know who they are locally,
2014, we had a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate. We had a Republican governor,
We did.
and they still couldn't get it through. So, I mean,
38
I go at this and looking at it every time.
they think it was Republican Democrat. There's 38 Republican trial lawyers in the legislature. Well, another thing, Gatti stood here and said there's only 5 lawyers in the Senate. That's interesting because there's 6 on June A committee that killed the bill. If there's 6 on June A, how the hell are there 5 in all of this? I mean, come on. And I think there's like 12.
He said one wasn't a lawyer.
1 wasn't. That's right. There's 7 on the committee, 6 are trial lawyers, and 4 voted to kill the bill. Talk about the vote for a second. Every Republican in the House voted for the bill. Not one single Republican in the House voted for the bill, and Gatti is the only Republican in the Senate that voted against the bill. Every Republican voted yes, that voted on the bill, except Ryan Gatti. Where there's smoke, there's fire. If Republicans are pro-business, if Republicans are pro-you, if you're a Republican, every single Republican in the legislature that cast a vote on this bill voted yes, except for Ryan Gatti. So where does that put it? There was no guarantee. That's true. But the word shall was in the bill. And if this worked to the insurance company's benefit, then the rates would have come down. I don't believe that the direct action statute, the jury threshold, collateral source is taking rights away from anybody. So the real question is, why not pass the bill? What was the result of the vote? The result of Senator Gatti's vote was to keep us in last place. We're not going to change anything. We're last. We're going to stay last. We're not going to try to get better. Now, come on, guys. If you've got an opportunity and a chance to try something that might work, that might get us out of last place, that doesn't actually negatively affect anybody, except maybe trial lawyers, shouldn't we try? Shouldn't that be something that we just give a shot? Because it's not really going to hurt anybody. And at the end, the worst case that happens is that the people of Louisiana are similarly situated to people in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, who have the same litigation rights that Louisiana would have after this bill passed, but they're paying lower car insurance rates. So the worst thing that would happen, is everything stayed the same. And essentially that's what happened. By killing the bill, they said, we're not going to try. We're going to leave it alone because trial lawyers are laughing all the way to the bank.
Did the committee say in advance they wouldn't pass it without a guarantee?
In advance, no, I'm not aware of that. And again, like I said, you can go.
That's a question I don't know. I was just putting that there.
And look, there's a lot of pressure on this bill. There was a lot of focus. There was a lot of media attention. I advised Kirk Talbot to not bring the bill. I didn't think it was going to pass. It got further than I thought it would, to be honest with you. But I advised him not to bring it because it was an election year. John Bell would have vetoed it anyway. if it would have passed, and frankly, I'm surprised Ryan didn't vote yes, and just let John Bell veto it.
You see, I think where I'm at with it is, I hold Gatti responsible, but I hold everybody responsible. I don't think it was negotiated well. I think the committee could have done more to, try to let it pass. I personally wish it would have passed, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, it looks like to me that it was obvious it wouldn't pass without a guarantee. So I'm saying, could you not guarantee like 3 years? 3 years down the road, give us a 5, 7, 8% drop, because if it's guaranteed to drop the rates, you got nothing to lose.
I told you, the similar bill that I wrote had a guarantee in it. I told Kirk, if you don't put the word guarantee in your bill, you're giving them the silver bullet and the excuse to kill it. Now he said, we have the word shall, we have the rate review, we have all that language, so it will come down generically. And everybody who testified on this bill, except for the trial lawyers and the experts hired by the trial lawyers, testified that the effect of these tort reforms, these litigation reforms, would drive insurance rates down. Just look at the other states. So it would come down. You can do it without a guarantee. And it's...
But here's why I hold everybody responsible. Galvin, or Gatti, Talbot, Donlan, because I believe that it did have a strong chance to lower the premiums over time to competitive rates. But a guarantee 3 years down the road would just put the hammer on. We'll never know if it would have passed or not with a guarantee because it didn't have a guarantee in it.
It wasn't going to pass because John Bell, the trial lawyers, didn't want it to pass. This committee was stacked. 6 out of 7 were trial lawyers appointed by John Lario and told to kill the bill. The other 2 Republicans on the committee got up and walked out and didn't vote at all. 4 Democrats voted no. 2 Republicans walked. No, excuse me. 3 Democrats voted no. 2 Republicans walked. Ryan voted with the Democrats and killed it. Yes, sir.
Could it have gone to a different committee?
Sure. John Lario decides what committee it goes to. He could have gone to any committee. Now, I will say subject matter, Jude A was the right committee. Jude A is, there's 3, there's Jude A, B, and C. Jude A deals with these it's comparable to the House Civil Law and Procedure. So, yes, he could have sent it to a different committee, and they do that sometimes, but Jude A is where all these bills go to die. And again, 6 out of 7 trial lawyers.
Do you believe the next form of 372 will have a guarantee? Because here's the thing, if they rejected this time, there's no doubt that it's all on that committee. There's no doubt that it falls on them. Because they're saying that that's the sole reason.
They're saying that the guarantee was just a convenient excuse.
No,
they were going to kill it. I said, I had the bill with the guarantee and they killed it.
But I'm talking about this specific bill. When they present it again, because I know y'all going to go back to the table and draw another form of it.
Yes.
And here's where I'm at with it. Me personally, just a nobody out here, I personally want a guarantee for 3 years down the road with a certain percentage drop. Because here's the thing. I'm just a guy here, I don't trust the insurance company like I don't trust the big government. If you are 100% in belief that it's going to drop the competitive rates, put a safety net 3 years down the road, put a small guarantee on it. That's me.
I really can't say I disagree with you. I told Talbot to put a guarantee. I put a guarantee in my bill. I agree with you, but
I like your stance on it. I like you putting guarantees on that.
Well,
I appreciate that.
What happened?
There'll be new players next year.
there will be, and it probably is going to come back up. It probably will come back up in several different forms. We'll probably have several different versions of it. And I don't like the 2-year prescription. I would not have put that in the bill.
I hope you're the one that brings this next 372.
What happened?
Because a lot of your ideas I'm with.
What happened to this, was it Senate Bill 212 that the Hayride had the article that it was mutated by an amendment by you back into basically HB 372? What happened?
My amendment was ruled non-germane by the speaker. He was probably right. I was just trying. Senate Bill 212, I don't even remember what it did. It was something about rates for trucks or something. It dealt something about insurance rates, so I stuck this bill on it. And that was probably correct. I was just trying to give it a shot. Another problem the bill has is it may very well have been, you probably tried to put too much into one bill. I think you should try to piecemeal it, like I've done in the past. I've brought separate pieces. I brought jury threshold bills. I brought vital source. I brought seatbelt. I brought direct action, separate bills. And then I brought a joint bill similar to this in 2014. You might need to piecemeal it because there were some portions of the bill trial lawyers didn't really object to. You had a majority saying, I could probably live with that. Now, the interesting thing was depending on which one you talked to. One of them said, I'm okay with direct action, but I really hate to change it to collateral source. Another one said, I'm okay with changing collateral source, but I really don't want you touching the jury threshold. So I think there might be a way, maybe some room to negotiate some of these and piecemeal it to some extent. And again, I don't know, everything is negotiable.
What's the solution? Because you said that you brought several piecemeal bills to try to get this through and they've been killed or whatever. How do you get around it?
Something you brought up earlier. When Jindal was governor, Jindal was backed by trial lawyers. I had several meetings with Jindal about this issue and was told in no uncertain terms, we're not going to let it pass. So Republican, Democrat, doesn't always have anything to do. We have a lot of Republican trial lawyers in the legislature. Y'all represented both in the Senate, Milkovich and Gatti. I mean, there's a lot of Republican, Milkovich not Republican, but there's a lot of Republican trial lawyers in the legislature. And most of them are pretty good legislators. Not on this issue, but on, most of them are not that bad. But look, it's easy to talk a trial lawyer into running for office. Hey, look, other people will pay money to put your name on a billboard. If you lose, everybody knows who you are. You probably get more business. If you win, hey, you get to be a representative or a senator for a couple of years. Easy to talk trial lawyers into running for office. That's why we've got a lot in the legislature.
I have a question for you that I asked Ryan. How did the insurance companies get the permission to go from a 3-year look back to a 5-year look back on the driving record?
I heard that question. I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, the other part is you just validated a statement I made to Ryan Gatti that in the state of Louisiana, the only way to get a lower insurance rate for drivers is to switch companies. Because you only got a certain amount of people that are going to buy insurance anyway. And you just said the State Farm lowered their rates because they lost so much business.
It did.
So that's the only way in Louisiana. You guys are not doing anything.
We're trying.
Oh, you're trying, but it doesn't happen.
I agree.
So, I mean, that's the only hope we have. Oh, you got to just change insurance. Well, at least every 2 years, get lower rates.
Everything else is still the same. I mean, this issue's not going away. It is going to be addressed next year. I hope if John Bell is governor again, it's not going to get better for 4 years. I mean, he's not going to let any of this pass. One of y'all asked a question. I couldn't see your faces on the video. A question about the advertising. Is the advertising cost of the insurance company factored into the loss ratios? The answer is no. When they submit the loss ratios and the rate reviews, it's things like overhead, which is paying the claim reps, and overhead dealing with the claims, loss payouts, and all that. Advertising, all that goes in a different category and is not a factor. So it's not like he used an example that said if they're making a 7% profit, they can just increase their advertising by a huge number, and then they get to make more money. That's not accurate. It's not how it works, and that's not accurate. Yes, ma'am.
So the insurance commissioner cannot really do anything about raising rates or increasing competition. It's got to be done legislatively.
We don't set rates. I mean, that's our, another thing Ryan was advocating was rate reform. We talked about that earlier. Telling insurance companies how much they can charge and what they can factor in. We've had he's been a senator for 4 years. I mean, you know how many bills he's introduced on that topic? None. You know who has? Barbara Norton. You know why? It's a terrible idea. You can't do that. If you start telling insurance companies, you have to lower your rates.
That's 2 times.
Yes. Look, if I'm sorry she's not going to be there, we lose some comment relief.
She got me $300,000.
I'm happy for you.
Oh, wait a minute, that's
If you just tell insurance companies you have to lower your rates and you don't change the system, there's not going to be anybody writing business in Louisiana anymore. Barbara had a bill that said you have to lower your rates by 5%. If they're only making a 7.7% profit, you just lower their profit to 2.7%, they're gone.
That's what I'm about.
They're gone. You can't do that.
I don't understand it, but maybe you can understand what you're trying to say.
The biggest problem I have with the bill was it would eliminate collateral source rule. We talked about that. one of the greatest conservative tenets is that a person's personal responsibility for our action, removal of collateral source rule, benefits the tortfeasor and his insurance company. If the victim is forced to use his own insurance, it could raise the victim's premiums on his own insurance, but not the guilty parties. In most circumstances, if the guilty party was lucky enough to insure the right person, he wouldn't pay anything and the victim would be left paying his own damages while the tortfeasor gets away paying almost nothing. Premiums and costs will still go up, but only for the prudent victim. All right,
It didn't make any sense to me.
all right, here's what he's saying. Here's what he's saying. You hit me, I have insurance.
Right.
And my insurance company is going to pay my bills. But you hit him, he doesn't. So Blue Cross pays $40,000, the $60,000 gets a write-off because I have insurance. So you pay, if the collateral source rule is taken away, you don't pay me for my medical bills. All my medical bills are paid by Blue Cross. I'm out of pocket, nothing, you don't pay me anything.
Right.
If you hit him, who had no insurance, you pay him the $100,000. So they're saying that's not fair. Why should you pay less when you hit me than you do when you hit him if you cause us the same injury? The problem with that logic is, the difference is that I didn't pay anything for my medical bills and he had to pay this. That's the difference. Is if I had Blue Cross and Blue Cross paid my bills, then you shouldn't owe me anything because they were covered. If he didn't have health insurance, you should pay for his bills if you're at fault. I agree with that completely. Collateral means a source somewhere else, other than yours. So if you have my insurance is considered a collateral source. They pay my bills. So in Louisiana, the guy who hits them has to pay it again, and whatever amount my company writes off, I just get the pocket and take. And that's one of the things that jacks up the rates. What they're saying is personal responsibility. If you cause $100,000 worth of damage, you ought to pay $100,000.
Right.
That's what he's saying. But the question I have, and he's right, I do agree with that.
Right.
I do agree with personal responsibility. But was I damaged $100,000? I had $100,000 worth of bills, but I paid zero. Because Blue Cross paid it, and the other was written off. So was I actually damaged? No, I don't think I was damaged $1. So should you compensate me for the damage that I incurred? Sure. Do you owe me $100,000? I don't think you should. But that's the problem. And the problem, and what your friend was saying, is you should be responsible for the damage that you caused.
Right.
Just because I have
That's why I have insurance. My insurance pays for the damages that I caused.
Yes. And yes, but again, under that scenario, did I incur $100,000 damage? I don't think I did. I incurred zero, nothing out of pocket. All my bills were paid and it cost me nothing out of pocket. So did I incur damage? I don't think I did. So that's essentially, it's a different way of looking at it.
Right.
And I would like to say Louisiana is the only state that has a collateral source. Most states have some version of it.
Right.
Where ours is just the broadest. I was actually talking to a trial lawyer today, the one I'm going to be trying the case against in a week and a half. We were discussing this issue, and he said, "Look, this was cynical." He said, "Nobody has health insurance anymore, so that doesn't really matter." That's actually kind of sad, but that may be a topic for a different day. But he said it's not an issue as much as it used to be because nobody has health insurance. Yeah.
On the collateral source, maybe you educate us real quick on it, because I was reading through the actuarial report on that. What entity or who is responsible for deciding the amounts that should normally be charged by a healthcare provider? How does that?
Right now, the doctor can say whatever number he wants. Now, here's the
Like your
difference.
scenario from going from 75 to 25.
If it's covered by insurance, the doctor has a deal with the insurance company that the insurance company will pay a set amount for that procedure. So he can't really fudge that amount. He can fudge the amount that he actually charges and increase the amount of the write-off all he wants. There's no prohibition against that. He can, whatever number he wants to put on the top end, he can. What he can't change is the amount, because he's got a contractual agreement with the insurance company of how much they're going to pay for that procedure. But as far as the top end, again,
Like a broken arm.
yeah.
He's going to charge you $2,000 to surgery except the arm. But he can say, actually it costs him $10,000, he's going to write off $8,000.
Sure. If there's nothing keeping him from saying $25,000.
So does the doctor keep, let's say the doctor comes up with, like in your scenario, $50,000 extra. The doctor keeps all that $50,000, or is
All
there
goes to the
anything?
plan.
So it goes to the plaintiff, responsible.
Plaintiff, lawyer split. Look, I actually considered that when we were debating it in 2018, putting a provision in there that says, if you do owe the whole 100, give the doctor the 60,000 that was written off. Why not? If he did a $100,000 procedure and only got $40,000 from Blue Cross, and somebody has to pay it, shouldn't the doctor keep the 60? I mean, I think so. Nobody else agreed with me. I thought it was a good idea.
Are you about done?
I'm just answering questions.
Okay. Let's get into the formal question thing here. We're running out of time.
I have
You
one.
got another question?
I only have one thing I want to set straight. So Ryan, and I didn't call him out, I regret not him. Ryan, whenever he was giving his presentation, we were talking about the jury trial provision and why it wasn't good. He said that it wasn't good because it would cost the state money because the state pays for jury trials. So that's wrong.
That's wrong.
And I want to set the record straight on that. Civil jury trials are paid for by the litigants.
Yes, the litigant that requests the jury pays the jury costs. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but I got a question about that, because in the legislative fiscal note for HB 372, it says, quote, proposed law will increase SGF expenditures, and the Louisiana Supreme Court anticipates a 36% increase, blah, 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 yielding an anticipated expenditure increase for district courts of $945,630 up to $1.4 million.
They will, but that
If it goes
is all
to-
passed along to the litigants. I
Right,
have
so
to get my jury trial coming up in DeSoto Parish week after next. I had to pay all the jury costs. I put it up. It was $3,600 up front, and they'll bill me for the rest afterward.
Right, so the state's gonna be out that money.
The state's not out anything.
Well, they're not out the cash, but they're out the time or however they factor it.
But the local parish.
The district court is going to incur an expense, but they're going to send the bill to me. My client's going to pay for it.
So the parish has not any more money.
No, they're not out anything.
Okay.
I mean, the cost for the jurors and all that.
That's what Ryan says, that well, it's gonna cost the taxpayers more money to do this if we lower the rates. And that's one of the big things he said.
The litigants who are asking for the provision are the ones who are going to incur the cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody from the gallery?
Yes, ma'am.
So I know we're specifically talking about auto insurance, but insurances are all married to each other, and I know for a fact after Katrina and Rita hit, all of our insurance, everything went up. So does it, and I'm looking at Mississippi now, and I know they were hit too. But so do you think this is just part of, we're going to try to recoup what we lost then because we're in a desperate situation?
You're talking about like homeowners insurance and structural insurance? Because that's,
Well, our homeowners and our car insurance went up after Katrina and Rita.
homeowners is something Louisiana actually got a handle of, and I think Jim Donlan did a really good job. After Katrina, it did, but it's come back down. Citizens has been a benefit that other states around the country are trying to copy. It has worked, creating a high-risk pool so that every insurance company is not carrying the risk for the ones that are really high risk. You create a high-risk pool to put the ones that are really high risk and do it through Citizens so that State Farm and Allstate and the other companies aren't necessarily incurring the high risk. So that has actually worked. I don't know how you can translate that into auto insurance. You can probably try. But those are completely different because there you're talking about the damage to a structure or the damage to a vehicle that gets flooded out or damaged in a hurricane, which is different from personal injury. Because there you have a specific dollar. The house is worth X number of dollars, and you can put a dollar figure on it. Whereas personal injury, it's a little more fluid.
In the last 7 years, the average auto insurance in Louisiana had the biggest jump of $362 in 1 year on average, where the nation was $88 in 2016 after the flood. So that accounts, if you look at the math, because math doesn't lie, that actually accounts for a large jump in the premium increases. But here's my other question. So we know that State Farm, Progressive and Farmers have collectively dropped their rates a little less than 10% in the last 12 months. So do you, as a legislator involved in the insurance industry and all that, do you foresee that that's going to continue to drop? Because what we hear a lot of the rhetoric on both sides about is if we don't do something, then it's going to get astronomical and we'll be an insurance Armageddon. But when we look at the actual math and the numbers and auto insurance, there's been a trend going down for about 18 months.
I don't know about Farmers or Progressive. I know State Farm, when they filed their rate review, said we are losing money in Louisiana.
Well, they also said they lost 100,000 clients, and they specifically used the word competition in justifying the rate reduction to Donald's office.
That's correct. They said we want to get more competitive. We lost 100,000 policyholders, so we're going to lower our rates because we want to broaden the base and we want to get those 100,000 back. But they're losing money in Louisiana. If they get those 100,000 back and they keep losing money in Louisiana, the question is how much longer are they going to continue to write business? Other states can only carry them so long. Again, Nationwide writes in 47 states. They don't write here. Remember the Sugar Bowl? Used to be the USF&G Sugar Bowl? That was a client of mine about 20 years ago. You know why it's not the USF&G Sugar Bowl anymore? Because they said see ya to Louisiana about 20 years ago. And we're not going to write business in Louisiana anymore. A ton of insurance, I don't have a number, but a lot of insurance companies have just said, to heck with this, we're not going to write business in Louisiana anymore, we're going to go, we'll write in other states, we're just not going to write in Louisiana. And it's,
so why in 20 years of time can't our legislators, whether it's you or whether it's Raymond or Ryan or anybody else, why can't y'all seem to get some kind of legislation that actually works and gets through? Because that's across multiple governments.
in the mid-90s, Mike Foster.
We didn't make it.
Well, let's assume that they weren't all either working as a trial lawyer or as an insurance attorney. Let's pretend they were all just everyday folks in there. Why can't we seem to get that handled?
I've been ramming my head against the wall since I got there in 2011, and different reasons, but in the House, which is where I am, the biggest obstacle was the governor. When he was Representative John Bell Edwards, he sat on the Civil Law Committee with me, and he would rally the trial lawyers to kill the bills. If I got them out of committee, he would rally them on the floor. I didn't pass a single bill onto the Senate, and I've tried every one of these multiple times, and it's trial lawyers, and it's rallying. I mean, because it affects their bottom line. I mean, they're afraid that, you know, they got the golden goose right now. It is easier to make money as a trial lawyer in Louisiana than any other state in the nation, and that's not really a debatable point.
When Virginia was governor, did he get more involved in on this insurance thing? 'Cause I've been in Louisiana for 6 years. That's how long my wife been here. So we don't know a whole lot of the past history of things, but I think what he said is key. It's such a long line of years that this has been neglected. I don't think we can look, I'm not defending trial lawyers. I'm a very objective conservative. I think the blame goes across the board. I think everybody that has been making laws in the past 20 years needs to be held accountable for the insurance in Louisiana. Jim Donlin, how long has he been the commissioner?
I honestly don't know. Maybe 12 years.
12 years.
14.
I mean, I got a question, is he the guy to be commissioner? I mean, at 12 years, has he not negotiated some type of way with lawmakers to, and I know we can't legislate premium, but as commissioners instead.
Well, in his defense only slightly, premiums for auto insurance over the last, actually longer than 12 months, have actually decreased in spite of the rhetoric. If you look at the math.
That's true.
So I'm not defending Don here, because I hold him accountable too, but rather than listening to, if they're out of Ruth and I, which they are, they actually have decreased, they go in cycle if you look at the chart.
The last time we really had an effort at tort reform in Louisiana was in the mid-90s. Big change was slip and falls. It used to be real easy to sue somebody for slip and fall. They changed the law. They don't have slip and fall lawsuits anymore. They almost pretty much took those out in Louisiana, which lowered rates for premises liability. Sometimes this does work. Your question about Jindal was no. Jindal, frankly, took a lot of money from trial lawyers and wouldn't let us talk about it. So that he was, and look, I'll say this. This is pure conjecture, but David Vitter, when he was running for governor, talked about tort reform over and over and over. I personally believe, despite whatever scandals he had in the past, if David Vitter had never said the words tort reform, he'd be running for re-election right now. Because it was the trial lawyers came out of the woodwork and raised so much money for John Bell because they were scared to death of David Vitter. over this issue. Yes, ma'am.
If it's so easily known that the trial lawyers are the reason why this is crashing and burning, how are they keeping on into office?
Well, why would we keep them
Well,
on?
that's what I'm saying. If we all know that this is the issue, then how are there so many in office that they're stopping everything?
But another question is, why put them on a committee of something they have so much self-gain on?
Because John O'Leary does what the governor tells him to, and the governor said, I don't want any tort reform bills to pass, so he staggered the committee with trial lawyers and sent every tort reform bill to that committee, and they all died on cue.
Can somebody create a law that says you can't have 6 lawyers on that committee? You can't talk about that.
On the flip side, not these issues, but when you're talking about the issues that those committees deal with, you kind of want lawyers. Because poor Raymond sits on the House Civil Law Committee.
And I do a great job.
He does a great job. But he's not a lawyer, and he's texting me, and he studies really hard, but he doesn't always understand what it is that we're talking
I
about.
know what the court fees there is now.
There you go. And he doesn't always vote with me. He votes first, so we go alphabetically, so he votes before I do. And he even killed one of my amendments, which I will forgive him for one day. One day. But no, you kind of want lawyers to some extent to deal with litigation, because most of the time, they're the ones that actually understand the nuts and bolts and how this could affect things.
Because another lawyer wrote it.
Right. Someone said, I shall do it. That's not my guarantee.
Commercial time.
All right.
Great.